Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you for presence here this afternoon for this special briefing on Honorable Prime Minister's upcoming visit to Japan, Papua New Guinea, and Australia. At the invitation of the Japanese Prime Minister Kishida, Honorable Prime Minister will be traveling to Hiroshima, Japan, tomorrow morning, 19th of May, to participate in the G7 summit, where India has been invited as a guest country. This would be the first leg of Prime Minister's three-country visit. The G7 summit itself, this time around, has chosen several key priorities for the current presidency. The broad terms of the G7 summit preferences, in particular regarding their outreach with the invited guest countries, is 1. On nuclear disarmament, 2. On economic resilience and economic security, 3. Regional issues, 4. Climate and energy, 5. Food and health, and development. There are other priorities also, such as digitization and science and technology, which would get highlighted in various sessions during the G7 summit. India's participation at the G7 summit in Tokyo would be structured around 3 formal sessions. 2 of them would be held on 20th of May and the third one on the 21st. The 2 structural sessions on the 20th are, first one that relates to food, health, development and gender equality. The second session is on climate, energy and environment. And the third session on 21st of May is titled Towards Peaceful, Stable and Prosperous World. India's regular participation at the G7 summits clearly points to increasing recognition that India should be a part of any serious effort to resolve global challenges, including those of peace, security, development, and environment preservation. This is even more salient in the context of our ongoing presidency of the G20 and our particular efforts to prioritize the interest and concerns of our fellow country members of the Global South. Ahead of Prime Minister's participation in the G7 summit, India has also participated in several ministerial level meetings of the G7, including in particular of the one relating to climate, energy and environment, 2 relating to digital and technology, and 3rd relating to health and finance. On the sidelines of the G7 summit, besides his interaction with the G7 countries and other guest countries in the 3 structural sessions that I mentioned, the Prime Minister will also hold bilateral discussions with several leaders of the G7, as also with the guest countries and the international organizations. Just to mention that besides India, Japan as the G7 presidency has also invited Australia, Brazil, Comoros, Cook Islands, Indonesia, Republic of Korea and Vietnam, and some of the international organizations including the United Nations. Honorable Prime Minister will also hold bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. This is still being scheduled, so we will give you more details of this as we go along. He is also scheduled to unveil a bust of Mahatma Gandhi in Hiroshima. As you are all aware, the 2 Prime Ministers last met during the Japan-India summit held in New Delhi earlier in March this year. We are also planning a Quad leaders meeting in Hiroshima with Prime Minister Kishida, President of the US, Prime Minister of Australia, and of course our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. After Japan, for the second leg of his three-country visit. Honorable Prime Minister will visit Papua New Guinea, which will include 1. The organization and the co-chairing of the 3rd Forum for India-Pacific Island Cooperation, FIPIC Summit on 22 May, and also some of the bilateral meetings. Prime Minister would be reaching Port Moresby from Hiroshima in the evening of 21st of May and will begin his bilateral engagements the next day with a call on the Governor General of Papua New Guinea, which will be followed by a meeting with the Prime Minister of PNG, Honorable James Marape. This will be Honorable Prime Minister's first visit to that country. During his stay in Port Moresby, Prime Minister will also be holding bilateral engagement with the Prime Minister of Fiji, Honorable Shri Rabuka. This would be their first interaction after Mr. Rabuka came to power in December 2022. As you are all aware, a major highlight of Prime Minister's visit to Papua New Guinea is the 3rd summit of the Forum for Indo-Pacific Island Cooperation, FIPIC, as I just mentioned earlier, which will be jointly hosted with the PNG's Prime Minister, James Marape. Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, just to recall, launched this forum during his historic visit to Fiji in November 2014, when he hosted the first FIPIC summit. The second FIPIC summit was held in Jaipur in August 2015, and both the summits have thus far seen participation of all 14 FIPIC countries. Just to list out the 14 PIC countries, these include Cook Islands, Fiji, Republic of Kiribati, Republic of Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Niue, Republic of Nauru, Republic of Palau, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu and Vanuatu. Prime Minister will also be meeting the Prime Minister of New Zealand during his stay in Papua New Guinea. This would also be Prime Minister's first interaction with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who was sworn in as Prime Minister earlier in January this year. For the last leg of his three-country visit, at the invitation of Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi will travel to Sydney on 22 through 24 of May. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to have a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Albanese in Sydney. This will be their 5th meeting within this year. The first was held exactly a year back on the same date in Tokyo on the sidelines of Quad Leader Summit. Prime Minister is also expected to call on the Governor General, Honorable David Hertley. Also planned during the visit is a business event where Prime Minister would be meeting the leading CEOs from Australia. Prime Minister will also be addressing the diaspora at a community event in Sydney on 23rd of May. We are expecting Honorable Prime Minister Shri Albanese to also expected to join Prime Minister Modi at this community event. The visit of Honorable Prime Minister to Australia comes, as you all know, within just 2 months of the state visit of Prime Minister Albanese to India in March this year. The first India-Australia annual summit was held during the visit in Delhi on 10th of March, and Prime Minister Modi's last visit to Australia was in November 2014. We expect, and it's also our objective, that the visit to Australia will reinforce the strong priority attached by India and Australia to our bilateral relationship. I would like to end here, and if there are any questions, would be very happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. For the ground rules, please introduce